They tried to humiliate me in front of the whole family. At the gathering, Mom lifted her glass, smiled at the room, and said, "Your sister just bought a luxury apartment. You could never afford that. No hesitation, no kindness. Just a clean cut meant to keep me small." Dad looked away. Marissa smirked. And something in me finally stopped breaking. It hardened. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply smiled because they had no idea what I'd built without them. Before I tell you the rest, tell me, where are you listening from? And what would you have done? I grew up in a house where love was measured in how brightly you could shine for other people. And in our family, Marissa was the sun. Mom said she'd been born dazzling, and everyone acted like my job was simply not to get in her way. If she wanted attention, I learned to shrink. If she wanted praise, I learned to clap. By the time I was 10, the script was already written. Marissa soared, and I blended. But there was a time years earlier when things felt different. Before she was born, Dad carried me on his shoulders, everywhere pointing out airplanes and clouds. Mom tucked me into bed, brushing my hair with slow, gentle strokes. Sometimes I still feel that ghost of a memory brushing past me, soft, warm, and impossibly distant. Everything changed the day Marissa arrived, and somehow that old version of me never came back. Instead, I became the dependable daughter, the quiet achiever, the one they assumed would be fine with scraps of affection because I didn't need much. They skipped my high school graduation to take Marissa to a regional dance competition. They missed my college commencement because she had a recital on the same night. They barely asked about where I worked, what I earned, or who I'd become. They didn't notice when I stopped telling them. So years later, as I stood in their living room for that family gathering, the walls felt smaller than I remembered closing in with old photographs of celebrations I was present for but never truly included in. Mom hovered near Marissa like a stylist fussing over a celebrity. Dad kept asking her about her new colleagues, as if she alone carried the family's future on her back. Meanwhile, I sat on the edge of the couch, legs crossed, hands folded, pretending the old ache didn't still reach me. I kept my appearance simple that day, a soft black top tailored pants, polished flats. Clean lines, nothing flashy. I knew better than to show up looking successful. It only sharpened their suspicion that I thought too highly of myself. Mom preferred me understated, manageable, familiar. She barely glanced at me as relatives walked in, hugging Marissa, first praising her new job, her new life, her new everything. A few offered me polite smiles, the kind reserved for distant coworkers. Only Aunt Helen squeezed my hand, whispering, "Good to see you, sweetheart." It was the first moment I felt seen. I tried to remind myself why I'd agreed to come, some combination of guilt, habit, and the smallest hope, one I hated admitting, that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd notice me, ask about me, care. But even before Mom raised her glass and delivered that line that sliced through the room like a blade, I could feel the truth settling in my chest. In this house, I was still the shadow they expected to stay quiet. Dinner hadn't even started when the tension began to crawl up my spine. It always happened this way, small remarks dropped like crumbs, leading me back into the same old maze. Marissa talked loudly, dramatically, performing her life as if she were auditioning for approval, and Mom, as always, was the eager audience. "Tell them about your new office," Mom urged her, beaming. "It suits you so well." "Oh, it's gorgeous," Marissa said, flipping her hair. Modern, bright, so me. Her eyes slid to mine. "Not sure you'd like it, Bree. It's not really quiet." Quiet, their favorite word for me. Their way of shrinking a woman who'd built an entire world in silence. Dad chimed in. "You're still at that financial job, right? Not the role, not the responsibilities, not the accomplishments, just that job." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "Yes." Before I could say more, Marissa cut in. "Stable is good for her dad. Some people aren't meant for big moves." The table laughed softly. Not cruelly, but knowingly. The way people laugh when they believe a story so deeply they no longer question it. I pressed my fingertips against my glass. Old reflex. Keep still, keep small, don't let anything spill. As plates were passed around and the noise swelled, a familiar heaviness grew in my chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was recognition. Muscle memory from years of being dimmed, reshaped, and folded into something easier for them to understand. The turning point arrived quietly. Aunt Helen asked Brielle, "Are you living close to downtown now?" She said it gently, without any agenda. The question felt almost human. Before I answered, Mom swooped in. "Oh, sweetheart, she rents. Far from downtown. That area is far too expensive." She laughed. A few relatives nodded, accepting it as fact. My jaw tightened. It wasn't the lie that stung, it was how effortlessly she told it. How certain she was that I couldn't possibly have built a life beyond the limits she'd drawn for me. I opened my mouth, but Marissa spoke first. "It's okay, Brielle, not everyone needs a fancy place. I mean, mine is special because it's earned." Earned. The word hit like a spark landing in dry grass. She didn't know about my position, my income, my home. She didn't know anything because she never asked, because none of them ever cared to look past the version of me that fit their story. Across the table, Aunt Helen's eyes softened, as if she sensed something shifting. "You all right, honey?" she mouthed. I nodded, though my pulse had begun to thrum against my skin. When Dad announced that everyone should gather in the dining room for a small celebration, I felt it, a quiet click in my chest. The end of tolerance. The start of something sharper. I didn't know the words Mom would soon throw across the room or how the entire night would pivot on a single sentence. But I knew this, I was done swallowing their version of me. Dad's small celebration turned out to be anything but small. The dining room was already set, extra chairs, dragged in candles, lit, the good dishes laid out as if someone had won a national award. Marissa preened in the center of the room, soaking in every glance, every whisper. I hovered near the doorway, feeling the air shift, charged anticipatory wrong. Mom tapped her spoon against a glass. "Everyone settle down. We have wonderful news to share." There it was, the stage, the spotlight, the script. Marissa clasped her hands dramatically. "So, I bought a luxury apartment." A chorus of impressed noises filled the space. "It's a big step," Mom added proudly. "Not everyone her age can afford something like that." The implication wasn't subtle. It was a blade laid neatly on the table. Dad laughed. "Takes ambition. And grit. Traits you can't teach." My ribs tightened. That familiar cocktail disbelief mixed with years of unspoken grief rose sharply in my chest. But I stayed silent, watching them celebrate her like she'd cured a disease. Mom continued, "We're planning a housewarming soon. It'll be beautiful. She deserves it." She turned her head, eyes landing on me with surgical precision. "Aiming that high isn't for everyone. Their pride wasn't the problem. Their rewriting of my entire existence, that was the part that burned." I felt the collapse then. Not loud, not visible. A quiet internal snapping, like a thread pulled too tight for too long. I realized no achievement of mine, no degree, no promotion, no home bought with my own money would ever fit into the story they'd crafted for themselves. And something inside me opened in that collapse. A small, sharp doorway. A pushback waiting to breathe. Dinner continued as if I weren't there. Questions flew at Marissa about square footage, amenities, decor. She answered each one like she was filming an episode of a reality show. Then she looked at me. "You should come see it, Brielle. Maybe you'll feel inspired." Her smirk curled. Or overwhelmed. A few people chuckled. I didn't. But Aunt Helen watched me closely, and I caught something in her eyes, a flicker of worry, maybe recognition. As dessert was served, I excused myself and stepped out onto the back porch. The cold air hit my skin like clarity. The yard was quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own heartbeat. I pulled in a long breath, feeling the steadiness return to my bones. Tessa always said that silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Let them talk, let them underestimate, let them reveal themselves, and then decide what to do with the truth. When I walked back inside, Mom called everyone to raise their glasses for one final toast. Her voice was bright, triumphant, full of expectation. The room hushed. This was the moment everything would begin to turn. Mom lifted her glass the way a conductor lifts a baton, ready to orchestrate the moment she'd been building toward all evening. To Marissa, she announced, her voice ringing through the dining room, "Our girl just bought a luxury apartment, a stunning one. Truly impressive. She paused, her smile stretching wider, and not something everyone here could ever afford. The words floated for a split second before dropping like stones. People shifted in their chairs. A few glanced at me, then quickly away as if catching someone falling was too heavy a responsibility. I felt the heat of every pair of eyes in the room and the coldness of the ones that wouldn't look at me at all. Mom still wasn't done. "Your sister did this all on her own," she continued, tilting her head toward Marissa. "Ambition pays off. Not everyone has the drive." The room nodded along. And then the line, the one that cut clean, the one delivered with absolute confidence that I would take it quietly. "Your sister just bought a luxury apartment," Mom said loudly, making sure the relatives in the back heard every syllable. "You could never afford that." A breath caught in my throat. Not because the words surprised me, they didn't. It was the ease with which she said them, the certainty, the delight behind them. Marissa's eyes glittered. She looked triumphant, almost relieved, like she'd finally returned to the top of the family hierarchy after sensing for the briefest moment that I might not be as small as they preferred. I glanced at Dad, wondering if he'd flinch, wince, clear his throat, anything. He didn't. He looked at his plate. A younger version of me might have folded, might have apologized, might have tried to prove something, earn something, chase something that was never coming. But that girl was gone. I felt the calm rise before I felt the words. I smiled. "Actually," I said lightly, "I bought mine 2 years ago." Silence. Immediate. Total. Electric. Forks paused midair. A cousin gasped. Aunt Helen's hand froze on her napkin. Someone's chair creaked across the floorboards. And Marissa's expression cracked right down the middle. Her confidence slipped, leaving behind something sharp and panicked. Mom blinked first. "That's impossible," she said, her voice suddenly thin. "You rent." I held her gaze. "No, Mom. I own my place. Bought it 2 years ago. You never told us," Dad said, his brows pulling together. I let out a short exhale. Not quite a laugh. "None of you ever asked." A ripple moved through the room. Not sympathy, not applause. Something quieter recognition. They were seeing me for the first time, not because I'd changed, but because their assumptions had. Marissa pushed back her chair, trying to recover. "Well, if that's true, then we should celebrate. How about you host a housewarming? Everyone would love to see what you've done with the place." Her tone dripped entitlement. As if my home were community property. As if she had the right to step into any part of my life simply because she wanted to. Mom perked up. "Yes, that's only fair. We've all supported you girls. You owe us a look." "Oh," that word again. I studied their faces, Mom's expectant, Dad's firm, Marissa's desperate. It wasn't about celebration. It was control. They needed my life to remain smaller than hers. My success, the kind they didn't authorize, threatened the entire family script. Aunt Helen watched me carefully, like she knew a storm was coming. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. I didn't match their spectacle with more spectacle. I simply sat there calm as a closing door. "There won't be a housewarming," I said. Mom's smile faltered. "Excuse me, you heard me. My home isn't open to people who never treated me like family. I don't owe you a tour. I don't owe you access. I don't owe you anything." A sharp hush fell. This one wasn't shock, it was recoil. Dad leaned forward, his tone warning. "Brielle, don't start drama." I turned to him. "I'm not starting anything, I'm ending it." Marissa stood abruptly, cheeks blazing. "You're just jealous. You're making this up because you can't stand that I bought a place before you." I looked at her, really looked at her. The fear, the insecurity, the desperate need for approval. She believed came from pushing me down. "You didn't buy it before me," I said softly. "But that's never been the issue. The issue is, you think your life gets brighter by dimming mine." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mom slapped her napkin against the table. "You're being cruel. After everything we've done for you, everything." A word so heavy with irony I nearly laughed. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked. "Skipped my graduations, ignored my accomplishments, told people I was struggling so your golden image stayed polished." Dad stiffened. "That's enough." "No," I said quietly. "It's finally just enough. Aunt Helen spoke up, then her voice steady. She's allowed to set boundaries. She's an adult. Mom shot her a glare. Stay out of this. Helen didn't flinch. Maybe if you'd stayed out of her way years ago, she wouldn't have to defend herself now. The room erupted whispers, shifting chairs, low murmurs of relatives, suddenly unsure whose side they'd been on all along. But I didn't engage, didn't linger, didn't twist the knife. Instead, I pushed back my chair and stood. My pulse was strangely steady. "I'm leaving," I said. "I wish you all well. Truly. But I'm not shrinking anymore just to keep the peace." Mom's voice cracked. "If you walk out, don't expect us to call." I paused at the doorway. "I don't," I said. "You never really called anyway." And then I walked out past the shocked relatives, past the photographs on the hall wall, past every version of myself I'd shed over the years. In the quiet of the night air, something loosened in my chest. Not victory, not revenge. Freedom. The kind that comes when you finally stop asking people who don't care to understand you at all. I didn't look back as I walked to my car. The house behind me buzzed with confusion whispers and the frantic rustling of people rewriting their loyalties. But the noise didn't follow me. For the first time in years, it stayed exactly where it belonged, inside their walls, not mine. At home, my apartment greeted me with its familiar quiet. The city lights stretched beneath my windows, steady and indifferent, a reminder that my life had never needed their permission to exist. I poured a glass of water, not wine. I wanted to feel everything clearly and let the silence settle. By morning, the messages started. Mom insisting I'd embarrass the family, Dad accusing me of disrespect, Marissa demanding an apology for ruining her moment. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I blocked their numbers. A clean line, a boundary that didn't wobble. Aunt Helen texted separately, "Proud of you. It's time they learned who you really are." I breathed easier than I had in years. I didn't crave their approval anymore. I didn't need their affection. All I felt was relief, sharp cleansing, final. Walking away hadn't broken anything. It had simply released me. Weeks later, I stood on my balcony at sunset, the city humming below, and realized something simple and true. Family isn't defined by blood, but by who shows up with respect. I didn't destroy anything that night. I just stopped accepting a role that was never mine. And if you've ever carried that same quiet hurt, know this: you're not alone and you're not wrong for choosing peace. Share your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.